Hey guys, welcome back to episode 2 of Triple Scorpio. Today we're going to talk about all of the outer planets and their ingresses, as we like to say, or like moving into air and fire signs. So I was recording for 20 minutes and I was going really in depth about all the different archetypes, all the different planets, all the different stuff, and I was literally stuck on Pluto. And I think I'm just going to try to make it snappy for y'all so that we can just get on the same page. Let's talk about why we might all be feeling so crazy right now. I feel like my mind is just worrying, firing on all cylinders about all the many things that I want to share with you guys about my practice, this practice, in this space of learning. Take a shot every time I say practice, but I just feel like that's really what this is, as opposed to, like I like to say, this isn't something that's dictating us. It's something that we can use as a tool to help us understand ourselves better and the world around us better. So I'm coming on here today to talk a little bit about the outer planets, because there's going to be a really big outer planet transit happening on April 25th. Not sure when this is going to come out. Plus, we're very close to having all of the outer planets in air and fire signs, which is, if you have heard anything about the year of the fire horse, which is the Chinese zodiac astrological year that we're in now in 2026, this is really where that symbolism comes in. As of April 25th, we'll have all officially moved into fire and air signs, which means as a society, we are wanting to act really fast. We are wanting to think. We are wanting to talk. We are wanting to do, go, yap. And for the past, 16 years, for the most part, as a society, we've been a little bit more slow moving. We've been a little bit more intuitive because we've had a lot of earth and water energy in the sky. So yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So if you've been seeing a lot of stuff about Uranus and Gemini, or Uranus and Gemini, however you say it, if you've been seeing a lot of stuff about Neptune and Aries, if you've been seeing a lot of stuff about Saturn and Aries, and all of that jazz, we're going to try to get into it all right here, right now, as succinctly as possible. The farther a planet is away from the sun, the more it impacts us on a collective and societal level. How does this come out practically? I'm going to start with the planet Pluto and what Pluto being in the sign of Aquarius means for us as a collective. Pluto is what's called a generational planet when we're talking about birth charts, because it takes between 11 to 24 years to move through a sign. So typically, the people in your generation tend to have the same Pluto sign. They were born when Pluto was in a specific zodiac sign. So because Pluto is so far away from the sun, it impacts us, like I said, on a very large scale. So we tend to associate Pluto with society at large. And Pluto rules over the sign of Scorpio. And if you know anything about Scorpio, it has a lot to do with power, vulnerability, with chaos, with destruction, with transformation, and a lot to do with an exchange of resources. I like to think of Pluto as something where we exchange something of ourselves in order to receive power. That's a very Plutonic and a very Scorpionic archetype. So when we're thinking about Pluto in a specific sign, like right now we have Pluto in Aquarius, we're going to combine those aspects of Pluto with the aspects and the archetypes of the sign Aquarius. Pluto being in an air sign means that as a society, we're going to be leaning more into cerebral topics, communication, thinking, using our voice, how we connect to people, very much about how I am in relation to other people and how am I using my voice, how am I expressing myself to those people. And again, it's very much of the mind. The air is very much your thoughts and your voice and all the tools that we use to communicate with each other. And Pluto was previously in the sign of Capricorn, and Capricorn is an earth sign. Capricorn is very much slow and steady, wins the race. Capricorn is very much, I'm working within a structure. I may even receive power, insert Pluto, by following the status quo, insert Capricorn. So there may have been a desire to uphold the status quo in order to receive more power and status, etc., etc. But during that time when Pluto was in Capricorn, which started back in 2008, there was also a real reevaluation of those themes of like, is this structure working for us? Is the status quo really going to give us power and, dignity? And is it really helping us as a society? Or is it maybe something that we need to break down, something that needs to die in order for a new thing to live? So during this time, there has been, like I said, a real reevaluation of those Capricornian ideals. When I'm talking about Capricorn in this sense, I'm not necessarily talking about Capricorn expressions on an individual level, but when we're talking about Pluto and Capricorn, there is going to be themes coming up around upholding structures, playing inside the system, and what kind of transformation and power can be gained when we either just like try to destroy those older systems or when we try to work within those systems. And maybe those antiquated ways of being are no longer serving us. And now enter Pluto in the sign of Aquarius, this very futuristic and kind of alien and technological air sign. Aquarius is ruled by the planet Uranus. Uranus is known in Western astrology as being a, quote, higher octave of Mercury, which means that this is sort of like even bigger idealistic ideas and ways that we communicate. I talk about this in one of my Substack articles where I discuss the relationship between Capricorn and Aquarius, which is really interesting when we're thinking about Pluto moving through both of those signs. So I'll link that below so you can read a little bit more about their relationship. But Aquarius really has this bird's eye view on society. So they're really able to see what society needs, i.e. the Aquarius archetype of the water bearer. They're able to bring society what it needs. It's bringing water to the masses. But that bird's eye view can really lead to them, and that perspective, that bird's eye perspective can really lead to them feeling alienated and alien and different from this humanity and this community that they so desperately want to help and be a part of. So that's where this archetype of Aquarius is very much like, I am a humanitarian. I want to help the masses. I want to move society forward in order to, bring us into the future. And it can be very idealistic, but when you're looking too much into the future, you might get caught up with not learning from your past, right? So I think that that's a real crux of what we're going to be entering into with Pluto and Aquarius, and it'll be here until 2043. So buckle up. As a society, we are going to be really dealing with things that have to do with relating to technology and how futuristic things might become. And because this is an air sign, it's going to be very quick paced. It's going to be a lot about exchanging ideas. As a society, we will be way more actively putting out information. And Aquarius is known as one of the genius signs. So it's Virgo and Aquarius, known as the two, very cerebral genius signs in their own ways. They think very differently from other people, and they have a really unique perspective for us. And especially with Aquarius, because they just are known for being super unique and seeing things that other people don't from a perspective that other people typically don't get to. So that's what's so essential about Aquarius as an archetype, but it can also, lead us into spaces, like I said, that we might not be ready for. I think Aquarius can be so far ahead in the future that a lot of people aren't necessarily ready to get there yet. But they also have the tendency to say things, to be able to see kind of the pitfalls of leaning too heavily into technology might bring us, because they do have that very futuristic, different perspective from people. I really associate Aquarius with sci-fi, and I think that when we are in a space at this pivotal moment in society where we're trying to see what the future might look like, and if we maybe need to revert away or revert back to the past or step away from an overuse of technology. I think that if you know many Aquarius people in your life, you might be like, they're not very technological. They're not really interested in using tech. They're actually pretty low tech people. And I associate that with their ability to have this foresight and this understanding of what technology can do to us collectively and what it can do to our minds, and how sometimes going into the future and moving us into a more healthy and happy future requires us to look to the past and see what was right and maybe didn't need to change. I think that, when we're talking about planets in a specific sign, it doesn't mean that, oh, those are the things that are going to happen. Oh, Aquarius rules technology. We're going to be super techie. It's actually going to be like, this is a theme. It's a point of discussion that's going to come up a lot now that Pluto is in Aquarius, of like, how much does technology have power over me, or do I yield my own power and my own boundaries over technology? That's something that I have brought up endlessly with Pluto and Aquarius. I think it's also going to be a lot about how we are interacting with our community more, how we're trying to be authentically ourselves, and the kinds of like-minded people that will come to us when we're being our true selves. Aquarius, like I said, I'm talking about this unique perspective and all of these things, but they are not interested in being anything but their true, authentic selves. And that can either alienate them, but it tends to bring them closer to their like-minded communities. So any Aquarius person, there's going to be like an attraction to unique individuals, people that have a very true expression of themselves. And that's what creates this sort of eclectic group that of like-minded people, but everybody's going to be a little bit their own, dancing to the beat of their own drum. That's very Aquarius. And I think now as a society, because we're going back to the Pluto and Aquarius aspect, there will be way more of an exaltation of people being their true selves, not trying to cater to the status quo, not trying to appeal to a certain common denominator that might have been upholding old structures, like I'm talking about Pluto and Capricorn. Now is a time to break into the future and be our true selves and see who flocks to us in that way, as opposed to, like I said, upholding an image, which can be Capricorn in a way. Again, not talking about this on a personal level, but instead of upholding an image and upholding old structures, we're breaking those down and we are finding our like-minded people and we are being our true selves. Aquarius as an archetype, as a sign, is really good at knowing that like the only way to exist and to find your tribe is by being yourself. And that's something that we're going to collectively be moving towards. I feel like we've all, since, it's kind of been brewing for the past 2 years, because Pluto was teetering on that cusp between Capricorn and Aquarius. There has been this real, I really just want to be me, and I'm not interested in these people who are conforming to the old ways of thinking and, upholding old structures. We're realizing that being our authentic selves is kind of the only way to exist in a crumbling society, and not knowing what the future holds. The best way to deal with not knowing what the future holds is to enjoy yourself and be your true self and find your tribe. That's why Aquarius also rules over, patrons of the arts and community, and like I keep saying, like-minded individuals, people that think like you. When you lean into what truly makes you happy, your niche interests, following what inspires you, your people present themselves. The people that will start to wield more power are going to be people who are authentically themselves. And there could also be a disillusionment around doing everything with technology and, relying too heavily on AI, artificial intelligence. Aquarius brings up these themes for us to think more critically about them. I also would like to bring up, this concept that's very colonial of just innovation for the sake of it and development just for the sake of development. Typically that means eradicating indigenous wisdom and, old practices that are way more in line with our humanity. And I think that in this period while Pluto is in Aquarius from now until 2043, there's going to be a real desire to evaluate hey, how much is tech actually helping us, or has it been hurting us? Maybe we don't need to use technology just because we have it. Maybe there's a new way to interact with it. Maybe there are new boundaries. This whole aspect of everybody going analog, using single-use technology. That's a huge aspect of Pluto and Aquarius, because we are thinking about and reevaluating, and maybe things need to be broken down. Maybe things need to die. Maybe we don't need to have development just for the sake of it. Yeah, those are some sort of lower vibrational Aquarius aspects that we'll collectively be confronting. It also makes me think of the term Luddite, which I feel like is kind of a misnomer and is very much miscategorized, because the Luddites were a group of people in England, I think they were a family, who actually were fighting against the misuse of technology because it actually wasn't helping them as a community. It wasn't helping them to connect to one another. It was taking away jobs. It was doing all these things. And we all know that technology and taking away jobs is a huge theme right now. I think that we need to maybe more proudly say that we're Luddites because we are being more critical of how we interact with technology because we're way more aware of what's at stake. So that's a lot about Pluto, a lot about Aquarius. I'll definitely be talking about that more. And there's really just so many different iterations. Like I say, it's so much potential energy, but I do think we all collectively feel this new interaction with technology and a new perspective on technology. And remember that we need to make sure that technology doesn't have power over us, but that we have our own power over how we interact with technology. And that can be all different kinds of technology. It doesn't need to just be AI. You know, the wheel famously was a technology or is a technology, and they ate with that, and we love that. And I'm using technology to communicate to all of you and to find my like-minded community. So there are good things that come from it, but it's more so just about understanding how we're going to consciously be wielding these tools, if that makes sense. Pluto, all about power. Aquarius, all about community and technology. So seeing how we can maintain our humanity and not become too disconnected from that humanity with an overuse of futuristic tools, I'll say. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about Neptune, the planet of illusions, intuition, sort of things not being exactly what they seem, fantasy, all of these dreamlike spaces, everything that can be felt but not seen. That's very Neptunian. It can also deal with anything that takes us out of reality. It can rule over things like drugs and substances. And again, when we hold an illusion or maybe a delusion in our minds and how that can cloud our judgment, that's what the planet Neptune presides over. So Neptune is associated with the sign of Pisces. Pisces as a sign is very much about their intuition and feeling things, even though they can't see it. So when we're thinking about Neptune has been in the sign of Pisces for the past 14 years. So Neptune moved into Pisces in 2011. So we've had that sort of double dose of Neptunian, intuitive, psychological healing, bringing up things that, are impacting us and our trauma that we might not be able to see, but we can feel. And now we're intuiting all of these things. That's been a huge theme since 2011. And also having a different relationship with substances. I think that a lot of people during this period have either become sober or felt the need to become sober, make a sort of lifestyle change and not be using as many substances to leave reality. I think that was a huge theme during this time. Now that Neptune is moving into Aries, all of our dream space, our illusions, our delusions are all going to be more felt in this sort of fiery and action-oriented way. I think as a collective, we're now having way more drive to pursue our dreams. Neptune has a lot to do with our dream and wish fulfillment. So when we have this, when that planet of dreams and wishes and, going for what we truly desire in the sign of Aries, there's way more passion and action to be taken around those things. I feel like since it got into Aries, which was at the end of January of this year, 2026, everybody's been okay, it's time to lock in. We are going for it. We are doing things. And again, this is way more about I'm going to be myself. I'm going to be an individual. I'm going to take action towards what I truly want. And it's going to be here for the next 14 years. So lots of time, but that Aries energy definitely makes us feel rushed and have a fire under our ass. And this is truly the beginning of that. And I think that has a lot, it's definitely adding to that fire horse energy of just charging forward with abandon towards what we want. So before I move on from this Aries energy, I want to give a special shout out to Saturn that's now in the sign of Aries. Saturn is a planet of delayed gratification. It is a planet of boundaries. It's a planet of limits. It's the planet that tells us that the things that are worth having take time in order for us to get there. So Saturn doesn't love to be in a passionate, energized, impulsive sign like Aries. And there is really just a sort of desire to be like, what structure can I put around my energy and my drive that will eventually lead to long-term results? So that's another thing that's connecting with Neptune in our dreams and a bunch of other Aries energy and planets that have been in the sky as of late. There's this sort of desire to take action and to move quickly and to feel like this sort of impatience that comes with Aries. But then there are all these other planets that are like, I want to pursue my dream. And then Saturn's like, yeah, but those things take time and you're going to need to take the proper steps in order to get there. And there's just that sort of push and pull between that passion and that drive and that impulsivity and all these structures and steps that need to be taken in order for us to get there. Aries is very much like, I want it now. I want to do this now. And I want to get that instant gratification. And when that doesn't always come through, it can kind of burn out and fizzle out. So a real important thing with Aries energy is to maintain that drive. And I think with Saturn and Aries, we might be able to see how that could come into play. And I think it's going to be more of a theme. I'm not saying that like, oh, we're going to have, structure and patience like Saturn in the sign of Aries. It's more like, oh, we're going to have to learn to have patience while we have all this drive and energy and passion towards something. Saturn was in Pisces until February of this year, officially. So we had a lot of structure that we were building towards our dreams. We were putting a lot of structure towards building our dreams. And now that it's in Aries, it's sort of like, okay, go time. We want to take action. We want to receive some sort of gratification, but Saturn is still saying like, okay, yes, take the action, do those things, but each action is going to lead towards a bigger picture that will pay off in the long run. Obviously, all of these things are impacting us in a personal way, and it has a lot to do with where these planets are transiting in your birth chart. So feel free to message me on Substack if you want a personal sort of like reading on what Saturn and Neptune and Aries and what Pluto and Aquarius all might be impacting in your chart, or we can do a full birth chart reading for you. But it's really interesting to kind of add in that house placement and see how they're interacting with different planets in your chart. So if you're noticing a theme with all of this new fire and air energy, we're starting to feel this sort of collective urgency, this collective need to act, but also our minds are racing a mile a minute. So we're trying to keep up with our thoughts and also take action and also understand that things don't always come into fruition overnight. So while we're all collectively feeling and thinking and acting a lot faster, some of us might be feeling a little bit groggy and trying to wake up from that collective earth and water energy that was in the sky for a very long time before this. So really now is the time to employ a lot of nervous system regulation habits and using all the tools that we had gained during all of that Pisces energy, where it's like taking care of your mental health, being in the unknown, taking things a little slower, feeling into things, trusting into things, all of those things that we learned over the past maybe 3 years when we had a bunch of Pisces energy in the sky. How can we employ that in order to handle this very intense, fast-paced, new kind of tone that all these planets are setting for us? We learned all of those things in order to use them now, because if not, there's going to be a lot of burnout, there's going to be a lot of confusion. Speaking of fast-paced thoughts, let's talk about Uranus moving into Gemini. Uranus is another ruler of Aquarius. Aquarius is ruled by Saturn and Uranus, and this is where that higher octave of Mercury comes into play. Uranus is another aspect of communication and technology. It rules over chaos, so it's sort of a very unruly planet. It has a lot to do with unexpected events that push us into the future, whether we're ready for them or not, which, if you recall what I was talking about Aquarius, those are very similar themes. Things that are going to be unexpected. You can never really predict what Uranus is going to bring, but we're going to try to in this space. But basically, Uranus is that planet that like you will not be able to guess what's coming. You can only kind of get a brief outline. You're just like, I know that I don't know with Uranus, basically. So Uranus, or Uranus, however you want to call it, has been in the sign of Taurus. So it's been kind of wreaking havoc around our finances, around our value systems, around what we find to be stable. Uranus has been like, you know what? Maybe we should approach this differently. Maybe we should shake things up a little bit here. That's what Uranus loves to do. So when we think about Uranus really bringing chaos and upheaval and pushing us into the future, then we add in that layer of the sign of Taurus. That's going to have a lot to do with our foundations that we've built for ourselves, our money, how we relate to money, what our value systems are, how we relate to beauty. Maybe we're thinking about beauty differently. Maybe we are drawn to more individualistic and unique looks in things, whether that's physical beauty or the beauty in our homes. Like maybe we're looking for more out of the ordinary iterations of what is attractive. And I would definitely say that there's been a lot of changes around our value system and money in particular. This has been a really prominent time for cryptocurrency during Uranus and Taurus, because Uranus is so futuristic and technology driven. Taurus is money, pretty one-to-one comparison. And this is the event that I was talking about earlier on in the episode. On April 25th, Venus, the planet that rules over Taurus and that rules over money and, you know, our physical things that we're attracted to, the physical things that we value, the physical things that we hold on to, and all of those things have to do with money and our finances. That planet, Venus, in Taurus, is going to be connecting with Uranus in Taurus at the 29th degree, which in astrology is known as the anaretic degree, and it's the final culmination of the energy of these planets in this sign. So there's going to be a culmination around our values, around money, and it's going to be very unexpected. So watch this space and see what sort of new and interesting or out of the blue, chaotic aspects that come from this connection of these two planets in the sky at a very potent degree. So something will be culminating from something that happened in 2018 and has a lot to do with all the things that I've just been talking about. There's a potential that this happens in a more personal way, but because Uranus is an outer planet, it tends to happen on a collective, more societal scale. So yeah, we're definitely going to be watching that space. This isn't something to scare us. Again, Uranus, yes, it's chaotic, yes, it's unexpected, but it's always going to bring us into the future, and it's going to push us into a space that we might not have ever thought we would go. So keep an open mind. Uranus will then be moving into the sign of Gemini shortly after there's this Venus-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, right around April 25th. I think officially it'll be there on April 26th. So at the end of this week, we will then have this higher octave of our minds, of this futuristic planet, chaotic planet, ways like a planet that wants to break us out of old ways of thinking and bring us into the future, is now going to be in the part of the sky that's ruled by Gemini. Gemini is all about quick thinking. It's all about communication. It's all about learning. It's all about sharing little tidbits of information. Because Gemini has a lot to do with our minds and how we think, Uranus in there is going to be shaking things up and bringing in new ways of thinking and new ways of communicating. And I think it's all going to be very unexpected, but I think it's going to be very fast, and we need to be very adaptable. Gemini thinks quickly, moves quickly, changes their mind quickly. So they might be, a Gemini energy might be feeling one thing one day and then be able to see the completely opposite perspective the next day. And with Uranus there, it's going to be intense. And like I said, it's going to be unexpected. So we're bringing all of these parts together. I think it'll be really interesting. So that's going to be the case from now until 2033. And I think all of this energy of being in fire and air signs, we're feeling the need to act collectively, and we're also feeling the need to change our minds and have an open mind about a lot of things. And there's a real need to be adaptable and malleable and very open-minded. And I think that the way that we interact with technology, the way that we communicate and express our individuality with technology is going to be a huge theme. Hell, maybe there might even be some pushback around how much technology that we're using. So a lot of stuff to keep in mind. I also want to just finally, I know we've talked about a lot of planets and we've really just skimmed the surface of what all of these things can mean. So if there's any questions about specific transits that I've talked about or specific planets that I've talked about, leave a comment on whatever channel you are listening to this on, and we can talk more deeply. And I also highly recommend subscribing to my Substack so we can talk in the chat. And the last aspect that I want to talk about that's adding even more fire and air into this is that the nodes of the moon where the eclipses happen have also started to enter in fire and air signs in the sky. So we have the North Node in Aquarius, and we will continue to have eclipses in Aquarius for the next approximately 18 months. And that means as a collective, we are going to be pushed towards a more Aquarian way of being. More Aquarius themes will seem more attractive to us. We'll be hungry for more Aquarius themes in our lives, which is connecting with people on a collective scale, finding like-minded individuals, finding our own unique niche and individuality, individual expression, and new ways of connecting and interacting with technology in our community. So that's going to be a really big theme when the eclipses arise, which are going to be in the Aquarius season and Leo season of the next 18 months. So that's, mid-winter, dead of winter, and like dead of summer. So think about that when the eclipses are coming up with the South Node in Leo, South Node in a fire sign. Leo is very much about self-expression. It's very much about who am I and how can I, be seen in the world? How can I share my unique gifts? With the South Node, we're being asked to let go of some of the lower vibrational aspects of Leo, which can be a little bit egotistical, a little bit prideful, a little bit relying too much on the validation of others. So there's going to be this push and pull between how can I share and be seen for my unique gifts in this creative space of Leo without becoming too attached egotistically or too prideful, and how can I lean more into my very unique individuality and going my own way in this Aquarian space, and maybe not trying to alienate people too much. So that push and pull between those two energies are also going to be really strong. Jupiter is entering into Leo, so there's just going to be a ton of fire and air going back and forth. And here's the thing, fire and air signs aspect each other in a very sort of like direct way, blowing air onto a fire, basically. That's what we're dealing with in the sky. That's what we're feeling internally. We're all sort of like reflecting that manic, high octane, very, thinking very quickly, wanting to share those ideas even quicker. And those fire and air signs are interacting in a very strong way. And I really hope that a lot of this is resonating and making sense. Please stay tuned for more episodes where we will go further in depth about all the things that I've spoken about. And if there's anything you want more clarity on in your personal chart, book a reading with me, subscribe to my Substack, and we can figure it out together. Also, stay tuned. I'm going to be opening up workshop dates where we can sit and look at each other's charts and learn together in a more collaborative teaching space sometime this summer or early fall. Even though I don't have it, I'm going to keep talking about it because it is on my to-do list. It's just been so hectic, as I'm sure you can imagine, based on all the things I was just talking about astrologically. And I know that all of us are feeling that, but don't worry, it's on my to-do list. Workshops and classes are coming out soon. And thank you so much for being here. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.